I want to play a clip for you of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg appearing on Face the Nation, and he gets asked about Trump, an attack against electric vehicles by Trump, and then Pete Buttigieg, as he so often does, is able to nicely dismantle the idea expressed by Trump. And I'll play that for you, then respond.
Donald Trump repeatedly talks about President Biden's decision to force the industry towards making 56% of car batteries electric by 2032, 13% hybrid. Listen to what he said in New Jersey recently.
Do you notice he's trying to save the electrical vehicle, but not the gas-powered, which is the vehicle that everybody wants? They're going crazy with the electric car, costing us a fortune. We're spending hundreds of billions of dollars subsidizing a car that nobody wants and nobody's ever going to buy.
He's not wrong.
He's
on
wrong.
The purchasing. He's not. Of the 4 million vehicles purchased, 269,000 electric vehicles were sold in the U.S. market. It's up like 2%.
Every single year, more Americans buy EVs
but
than
why
the year. Well,
aren't
this
we
is really
seeing it move
important.
more quickly?
Every single year, more Americans buy EVs than the year prior. There are two things that I think are needed for that to happen even more quickly.
I'm going to quickly pause your viewing of this video to ask you to subscribe to the YouTube channel to help us continue to grow. It's free, it's easy, but I appreciate it so very much.
One is the price, which is why the Inflation Reduction Act acted to cut the price of an electric vehicle. The second is making sure we have the charging network we need across America. Even though most EV owners will do most of their charging at home, if you live in an apartment building or you're driving long distances, you need other options in those chargers. So that's exactly what we're working on. But I want to talk about the bigger point here. And I take this very personally because I grew up in the industrial Midwest, literally in the shadow of broken down factories from car companies that did not survive into the turn of the century because they didn't keep up with the times.
And many of those auto workers are concerned that electric vehicles require fewer humans to manufacture.
The most important thing is that the EV revolution will happen with or without us, and we've got to make sure that it's American-led. Mm-hmm. And that's what the president is focused on. We don't want China. Look, under the Trump administration, they allowed China to build an advantage in the EV industry. But under President Biden's leadership, we're making sure that the EV revolution will be a made in America EV revolution that
because
is
of these
critically
tariffs we're
important.
talking about that President Biden says he's going to roll
also
out.
Just making sure we invest in America's capacity, making sure that we are onshoring or friendshoring the materials and the processing of what goes into these EVs, making sure that America masters these processes. Because look, there's no way that we're going to get to the middle of this century with the technology that we counted on a century ago.
Yeah, so fantastic job there by Pete Buttigieg. We'll look at also him on Fox News somewhat recently making a similar case, but that'll be a little bit later. First, I want to go through some of what was said there. It is true, the electric vehicle market continues to grow. And so there is demand. The idea that Trump was saying, which is that nobody wants to buy electric vehicles, that's just wrong. It's not that right now we're ready for everyone to get an electric vehicle. Totally understand we're not there yet. It's that there's definitely increasing demand. Now, it is a concern that the market isn't increasing as fast as we'd hoped maybe, or as we expected. And that is something that's perfectly fine to bring attention to. But as I've said with the broader concerns around renewable energy, when people will bring up, well, we need improvements to the electrical grid, we need technological advances, we need all these things to happen before we be ready to maintain our current lifestyle with just renewable energy. That's all totally true, fair. But if we're going to make those advancements, take those steps forward, and eventually get to a place where we are ready for that, then shouldn't we be doing something like what Biden and Democrats are doing and trying to make these investments, solve those problems, and push us forward? But instead, those issues are framed as contrary to the policy agenda of Biden, which it seems it's actually perfectly aligned. Yeah, let's solve those problems. And so that's number one. Then also, I wish that I could get people to care about the transition to renewable energy just based on our care for the planet. And in a very personal way, don't you want to breathe good air and drink good water and not have ecosystems devastated and thus our food supply impacted by that? So very personally, without some big abstract concept, it's very in your interest to care about the planet now and going forward. But I know a lot of people don't find that motivating enough, unfortunately, as we've seen with our political choices. So even more personal than that, we could save money as Americans, as consumers, if we would invest more properly in this transition to renewables. Renewables are now significantly undercutting fossil fuels as the world's cheapest source of energy, according to a new report. Of the wind, solar, and other renewables that came on stream in 2020, nearly 2/3, 62%, were cheaper than the cheapest new fossil fuel, according to the International Renewable Energy Agency. Then you also have Science News Explorers writing green energy is cheaper than fossil fuels, a new study finds. Making a fast switch to cleaner, renewable power could save trillions of dollars by 2050. So even conservatives out there who don't identify with the very important existential need for us to care about climate change, you could save money. We could all save a lot of money if we would more properly invest in this transition. And as Pete Buttigieg was saying, when it comes to electric vehicles specifically, this, I think he called it EV revolution, is going to happen with or without us. Do we want to be behind countries like China? They talk so much about, and Trump will fearmonger about how somehow investing in electric vehicles is in the interest of China, but no, it's to the contrary. Let's make sure as this industry grows that the United States is leading, is competitive, is dominating in this space so that we can have thriving industries here. We can have jobs here. We can have American companies making these cars. Isn't that the patriotic thing to do? But instead, again, the problem is framed as against the solution when it seems to be a motivator for us advocating on behalf of such a solution. Before saying any more, here's this Fox News moment that I referenced.
Let me just pursue that if I could with you. Tesla sales fell 8.5% the first quarter of this year. Ford this week is laying off 2/3 of its workforce at the F-150 electric Lightning plant. It's also scaling back a battery production facility because of sagging sales. EV sales are nowhere near what this president wanted or expected, yet the administration continues to shove them down consumers' throats. Why?
Well, let's be clear. Consumers have wanted and purchased more EVs every single year than the year before. And, Tesla is facing more competition as GM and Ford and Stellantis and other competitive players start to make sure they get a piece of the EV market. Let's be clear that the automotive sector is moving toward EVs, and we can't pretend otherwise. Sometimes when these debates happen, I feel like it's the early 2000s, and I'm talking to some people who think that we can just have landline phones forever. The reality is that the automotive sector is moving toward EVs, and the U.S. can either fall behind China or we can claim the lead. President Biden wants to make sure that those EVs are made in America, especially, again, as more Americans choose EVs every single year than the year before. We've got to make sure that those are made on American soil in places like northern Indiana, where I grew up, places like Michigan, where I live right now. During the Trump administration, China was really able to build an advantage in the EV market, and obviously not because they're big environmentalists over in China, just because that's the economically smart play. We've been working to make sure that that advantage comes back onto American soil.
Yeah, I don't understand. So another great job from Pete Buttigieg, but I don't understand why the Fox host frames subsidizing electric vehicles as shoving them down consumers' throats, when we've been subsidizing fossil fuels for so long, and that's not been something he has a problem with. And then I guess, is he referring to the tax credits that Biden has rolled out for electric vehicle owners, which to me is the perfect, again, solution to the problem they're mentioning, which is that, yes, it's true right now, they haven't been something companies are working on long enough, and there hasn't been enough competition for long enough for the prices to come down on electric vehicles to a place that would make sense for more consumers. And so as that happens, and it's happening, but as that happens, it's a good way to bridge the gap to have tax credits so that people can afford it. It's not enough for a lot of people still, but so more people can afford electric vehicles who wouldn't be able to otherwise, but are interested in them. And so bridge that gap when the demand is there, but the price issues are messing with where we want to be. Seems perfectly reasonable to me. Let me know what you thought of that, and let me know what you think of the broader electric vehicle conversation.